This video is going to be about playing card games with a standard deck and working on basic numeracy, building and reading 2+ digit numbers, rounding 2+ digit numbers, and adding doubles and near doubles. Shows you various games you can play with this. It was in these ideas were inspired by multi-sensory math course and by a professor named Ronit Bird, who's based out of the UK, and she has a website and a lot of different math games and math books that she has put out to help students who have math learning disabilities. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a standard deck, and I'm going to remove, like I usually do, the tens, the aces, the kings, the jacks, and the queens. Then I can combine decks if they have similar backs. Often the Dollar Tree has card backs that are exactly the same, actually, so you can combine them just so you have more cards to work with. So we're going to pretend, first of all, that students can just play war, of course. They can just look for higher or lower numbers based on that. They draw. The student has 7 versus 5, and notice they have the 5 and then 2 more, just like Christopher Wooden does. This one has the 5 and the cross pattern, so this one would win. It would play again. This has the 3 in a line, and this has the 2 in a line. The 3 would win, and so on and so forth. This again has the 5 and the 2, and this one has the 3 and the 2 dot patterns, and this would win. So this would work on basic numeracy, knowing numbers, and which quantity is larger. In terms of reading 2-digit numbers, what you would do then, you could either have students draw from a deck, or I could hand out, each student's going to get 2 to start with. We'll start with 2-digit numbers. So they would go ahead and lay them out. And this student could see that either they have 63 or they have 36. So they would work on reading these numbers. This student could either have 57 or they could have 75. They would obviously want to have 75. In this case, they would have the higher number and they would win. You can translate that to 3-digit numbers, which my students really like to do. They like to see how high they can go. So this student would flip over 3 cards, or I'd hand them 3 cards. This student would flip over 3 cards. So then they would have to recognize, okay, I can flip this around, organize it, and I have 874. This student would have to recognize that they can flip it around and have 952. And, of course, it takes some practice and some guidance sometimes to say, hey, what else could you do from this number? And what else could you build? So that's good. And some students want to include the tens because they want to make it even more complicated, and I let them do whatever they think they can handle. Now, when it comes to the rounding, it's just the same idea, except we're adding a rounding component. So they would play the game of war again. But in this case, this student would recognize that they have 96, and that can round to 100 if we're rounding to the nearest 10. This one has 44, which would have to round down to 40 if we're rounding to the nearest 10. We could also play the game such that they're getting 3-digit numbers and they're rounding to the nearest 100. So this student, and they're still wanting to build the highest number they can. Of course, this student has 332. They have to recognize that that can be 300. This student can recognize that they have 975, and if they're rounding to the nearest 100, that would be 1,000. You could also give them the challenge of rounding. Okay, you're getting a 3-digit number, but how are you going to round to the nearest 10? In which case, this would be 980, and in which case, this would be 330. So that's how I would use it for the rounding games, which my students seem to really enjoy those games. The last game I want to mention that I made up at the spur of the moment was a game based off of a solitaire sort of pattern, which is adding doubles and near doubles. And essentially, the game just asks students to flip over cards and find matches of doubles or near doubles. It doesn't always come out perfectly, and that's fine. So I have one student start. They have to start by flipping over 2 cards. They have a 7 and they have a 4. I hope you can see all this on the camera. They have a 7 and they have a 4. So that is not a double, nor is it a near double. So they would just have to pass to the next student. The next student would go, ooh, they have a 6. So I would have them say 6 plus 6 is 12 plus 1 more is 13. And they would get to keep this match, right? Because they won, they get to go again. So maybe they want to choose to go from this pile. Nope. They get to go 5 plus 4. Okay, so they would say 4 plus 4 is 8 plus 1 more is 9. And they would take it. Now, if you get down to nothing, then they're permitted to flip 2 cards. So they would flip a 4, and they would flip a 9. Not a double or a near double, so their game turn is over. Next student. Next student would flip a 6. Can't do anything. Next student would flip a 3. All right, 3 plus 3 is 6 plus 1 more is 7, and they would get this. Now, it sometimes happens that you'd run out of cards in a pile, and that's fine. I just say, all right, you pick from the bottom of another pile, and they can go to another pile. And then we go until the table's clear, and whoever has the most matches wins. And my students seem to really enjoy that game. I'm sure you could do it with all sorts of things, like, finding cards that add up to 7, or add or subtract to 7, or something of that sort. So there's lots of variations you could do on this game, but they seem to enjoy that one quite a bit.